Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to today's video. This is going to be a really quick chatty sort of video. I recently was watching another YouTube creator and she said something which really caught my ear. I'd never heard it before and I thought it was a very interesting rule of thumb when it comes to palette purchases, and I wanted to talk about it. So if you're new here, hey, my name is Rachel. I'm a homeschooling stay-at-home mom. I really enjoy eyeshadow, especially colorful eyeshadow, and I own almost exclusive indie brands at this point. It just happened to end up that way. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, I do upload several videos every week, and I hope that you'll consider subscribing before you go. I wanted to do a video on this topic while I was applying my eyeshadow today, but the children would not let me. They were hollering. So it didn't happen. And instead, I'm going to turn this eyeshadow look into a reel on Instagram, and I'll bring it over onto YouTube as well as a YouTube short. But today I used the Nomad Ireland Wild Atlantic White palette. This was given to me in PR, my first PR ever, and it's a really nice palette. I mean, if you like greens, I don't think that you'd dislike this palette. But this video is not about the palette. So if you want to see today's eyeshadow look, it's either up already, and if so, I'll link it below, or it's coming soon, and you can just check out my channel or my Instagram if you want to find it there. So anyway, let's talk about today's video's topic. I was recently watching a video from Aleisha Budget Beauty, and I'm pretty sure she watches my videos now. So hi Aleisha, and thank you for inspiring today's chatty little video. What Aleisha said when talking about palettes and new acquisitions and everything was something so unique. I had never heard it before. I found it to be kind of a great idea, honestly. Now, I know that she receives PR from a bunch of different brands, and maybe she gets gifts and stuff too. So as far as I'm aware, this only applies to her opening her wallet for a new purchase. And her rule of thumb was something like this. Let's say Udenzai releases a brand new palette. What she does is she compares that launch to her standing favorite from the brand. And if they don't compare favorably, and she's still far more interested in the color story of her favorite, then she's less likely, or possibly not at all likely, to get the new release. I was watching her video that she just put out on earthy palettes, and she held up the Red Dragon palette from Udenzai and Judy when they first did Legendary Diversa. The Red Dragon palette is a more neutral heavy palette with sort of a reddish and pop of sage bent. And Aleisha said that it has kind of ruined her for all other Udenzai palettes. It's just the gold standard for her. And she's never been as interested by another Udenzai color story release. I think that's a really creative way to talk yourself down from the hype and the excitement and the FOMO of new launches and releases. Why would we bring in something that we actually consider to be less interesting or exciting than our favorite? It doesn't make sense to bring in something new that you're expecting to like less, right? Now, again, I don't know if Aleisha follows this rule of thumb to the T. I think that there's some wiggle room, and I appreciate that there's some wiggle room because I personally would need a little bit. There were two other angles that I could see kind of around this concept. And the first one is, what about that palette that kind of rises through the ranks and surprises you? A perfect example, again, back to Udenzai, that wasn't intentional, but the Sea Talk palette with Lauren May Beauty, when that was released, I knew that I would like it. But my favorite since its launch has been the Merry Christmas palette from 2022 holiday. So I bought the Sea Talk palette, and in my last Udenzai ranking, I put it at number 1. I put it over the Merry Christmas. Now, again, rankings are subject to how you're feeling at the time. So I think for me, realistically, Sea Talk and Merry Christmas are head to head. I love them both. When I want something that's a little bit more neutral or quiet, I might go for Sea Talk. When I want something that's more bold or dynamic, I would go for Merry Christmas. But they're both great. And I didn't expect Sea Talk to ever surpass all of my other Udenzai favorites, especially because it's kind of more neutral leaning. It's got 4 browns out of a 10-pan palette. So that's a palette that just took me by surprise. And if I had stacked it up against the Merry Christmas palette, which was my favorite, I may never have brought Sea Talk in because it didn't excite me as much as Merry Christmas. Another example might be the Flare palette from Ace Beauty. That has been one of my all-time favorites from the beginning. It's actually one that I bought pretty early on, and one which I loved so much I bought the new formulation and I passed along the old formulation. So I say the Flare palette because there were actually several other Ace Beauty palettes which I have owned over the years, color stories that should appeal to me, right? And yet the Flare palette stands above all of them. I wasn't expecting that one to be a favorite, but it It didn't take long to become a favorite. There's just something that's different and interesting and unique about that color story that I couldn't find in the color stories that I expected to love more. It snuck up on me, and it's been an all-time favorite. So there has to be, at least personally speaking, I can't speak for Aleisha, but there has to be some wiggle room for me to allow something to come into my collection, which maybe I wasn't, like, I knew I would like it, like Seed Talk. I knew that I would like it, but I didn't expect that it would rise to the top so quickly. And I think a lot of us can relate to that, where you try something out and you're like, oh wow, I love this. I've seen people say similar things about the Sorceress Smoke palette from Unearthly. It's maybe a standard or boring or uninteresting color story until you use it, and then bam, the looks. People just love it. Kind of like a dark horse, you know? It doesn't seem to be that exciting or engaging, and yet it turns out to be something that takes the cake. And I love to have a little bit of wiggle room for surprise, because sometimes a palette really will surprise you. And it could go the other way too. You bring something in that you expect it will be your absolute all-time go-to forever, and you're disappointed. It's just not what you wanted it to be for whatever reason, performance or packaging or color story or whatever. Maybe undertones, how it looks on your skin specifically, and it doesn't look like that on anyone else's skin. And why does everybody love this and I can't make it work? I've lived that as well. So there's even a surprise in the negative direction where you thought you would completely love something and it just didn't pan out. And the other angle that I see for this is something which I have found myself doing, and that would be filling a gap. I have a pretty colorful collection. I like colorful eyeshadow, but now and then I do want to go neutral, and I might not want to pull 7 different palettes from my collection to get a brown from here and a lighter brown from here and a black from here and sort of a neutral shimmer from these 2 palettes, you know? So I have brought in a couple more neutral leaning palettes or neutral heavy palettes to round out my collection a bit more. So if that's what I want, I can just grab that palette. There are even some more neutral palettes, or even fully neutral, like I Need a Nude from Natasha Denona, or in my case, probably the $10 Amazon dupes from the Lamora brand. But anyway, they're completely neutral palettes, totally unexciting. But when I want a neutral look, I want it in good quality and in a performance and a formula which actually excites me, something which I enjoy using. So I'm filling a gap in my collection. I have tons of color. I would like some neutral. I'll bring in a few palettes that are neutral. Now, they're never gonna be my all-time favorite palette. I'm probably not likely to reach for them a lot. Other things are favorites, but I can still appreciate them for what they are. It is many hours later in the day, and I was editing the video and realized that the last several minutes just got cut off. I have no idea why, I'm sorry, but I just wanted to finish out my thought. As far as filling in a gap and bringing in neutral palettes, if you're a color lover, like I said, they're never going to be my favorite palette. So any new releases, any new neutrals, I wouldn't stack up against my favorite from a brand, but I like to have the option. It just helps me have a more well-rounded collection where I've really got the ability to reach for anything that I might be feeling at the moment. And I do tend to go through seasons. Sometimes I'm feeling more colorful, sometimes I'm feeling more neutral, sometimes I'm feeling neutral, sometimes I'm feeling neon. It's a creative expression, and I enjoy having options in all those categories. I don't want to be overwhelmed. I don't want to have hundreds and hundreds of options, but I would like to have each category represented within reason. So those are my thoughts. I don't know if I said anything else when I filmed hours ago, but that's where I'm gonna land right now. I really would love to hear your thoughts. Aleisha, if you're watching, of course I'd love to hear your thoughts. I have a feeling that you've thought this through pretty extensively, so how do my musings compare to yours? But everyone else, I would enjoy hearing what your feedback is and what you think about the concept of comparing a new release to your favorite from the brand to assess whether or not you actually enjoy and would want to purchase the new releases. But also, how do you do this? I mean, do you fill gaps in your collection? If you look amazing in mint eyeshadow, does it make sense to you to buy a single palette which is very heavy on the mints and the light blues and the turquoise and the teals? Or do you feel like, well, I've got a couple mints throughout my favorite formulas and that's enough? How do you approach this? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope this video was worthwhile for you. Be sure to check the description box for today's eyeshadow look. If it's live, it will be linked there. And I hope that you'll consider liking and subscribing before you go if you want to see more content like this. I also recommend checking out Aleisha's channel because she's really sweet, she's nice, she does lots of creative eyeshadow looks, and she's always focused on getting good value for your money. So her channel is linked below in the description box if you're curious. Check out her stuff. She's got a lot of good videos there. And I will see you guys, hopefully, in my next video. Bye.